Hi, just picking up where I left off. What's at tempo? I asked. Race pace, he said. How bad could that be? I said to Danny. Bad, Danny said. Coach Quattrini had us stretch for 3 minutes, then do four short sprints down the length of the gym, and then stretch for another 2 minutes. Afterward, he took us outside to the track, where there was a pretty brisk March wind that cut right through my t-shirt. He put us at the starting line, held up his stopwatch, and blew his whistle. Danny was right. Race pace could be bad. I don't know how many times Coach Quattrini used the word faster, but if a word can get worn out and die, this one died like Julius Caesar. He liked to add words to the front of faster, words like a whole lot and can't you go any and you'd better get and dang it. He also added words after faster like you wimps and you slugs and you dang slugs toward the end. It wouldn't have taken much for him to be able to play Caliban on the Festival Theater stage. Afterward, when we all had our hands on our knees and were trying to suck some air into wherever it wasn't that it needed to get, he reminded us that we all had to try out for the varsity team and promised that tryouts would be a whole lot harder than what we had just done. Toads, beetles, bats. Now here's where the weird part comes. Into my head jumped this sentence. Tryouts will be in a week on the Ides of March. And as soon as I thought it, Coach Quattrini said, tryouts will be in a week, and you better be a whole lot faster than this, you dang wimpy slugs. I wondered if somewhere down deep within me, I really was a soothsayer, even if only the first parts of the sentences were the same. I ran over the weekend, not because I was worried that Coach Quattrini would think I was a dang wimpy slug, but because I was pretty sure that if I didn't, I might have something awful happen to me after running at tryout pace on the Ides of March. I ran 3 miles on Saturday, and then 4 miles on Sunday afternoon, even though it was the Sabbath and I deserved some time off. And actually, there was another reason for running over the weekend, an even better reason. My father was mad at my sister, which meant somehow that he was mad at me too, and it was better to be running with my lungs screaming for air than to be in a house with my father screaming at me. And let me tell you, it wasn't for anything I'd done. Now that he had the new junior high school contract, my father needed to hire someone else in his office as a receptionist for weekday afternoons and Saturday mornings. And since he didn't want to pay anyone much for this, he decided that my sister should do it, and he would pay her $1.35 an hour and not take out any taxes. He announced this at supper on Friday night. I can't, said my sister, while passing the lima beans and not taking any. Of course you can, said my father. It's about time you started a real job. I'm already working, said my sister. We looked at her. For who? Who for? My father asked. For Bobby Kennedy, she said. For Bobby Kennedy, said my father. Mr. Goldman is letting us use the back of his bakery for campaign headquarters. Bobby Kennedy, said my father again. Bobby Kennedy is a rich kid from Cape Cod who's never done anything on his own his whole life. Bobby Kennedy will end the war, end the discrimination that's splitting our country in two, and end the control of the government by a handful of fat old men. My father, who was not fat and old yet, but who could probably imagine himself that way, started to get a little louder. Not a good sign. You might as well go work for that Martin Luther King. Maybe I will. He and Bobby Kennedy are the only ones who care that this country is about to explode. He's a communist. Oh, there's deep political analysis. He's leading a demonstration for striking sanitation workers, so he must be a communist. Now you've got it, said my father. You start work Monday afternoon. I think you can figure out how the rest of that conversation went, and how my mother and I didn't say much, and how we never did make it to dessert, and why it was a healthy thing for me to be running over the weekend, even though I hadn't done a thing. Still, I was glad that Bobby Kennedy was running for president. It was hard every night hearing President Johnson and all of his generals with medals spread over their chests say how well the war was going and how the enemy was about to give up, and then having CBS News cut to pictures of soldiers who were wading through rice paddies and holding their rifles high above the water, or who were carrying out a buddy whose face was covered with dried blood, or who were huddled in holes and covering their heads as the mortars came over in Khe Sanh. After that, you just wanted someone to say the plain truth, and maybe Bobby Kennedy would be that someone. I was glad he was running for president. And so, maybe, after all, I had done something to make my father mad, just not out loud. At gym on Monday, Coach Quattrini had us run 3 miles, all at tempo. Let me tell you, after running for 2 miles and hearing, "Can't you go any faster, you dang wimpy slug," in your ear for most of it, you start to wonder if life is worth living. You still have 4 more times around the track, and the sky is turning darker, and the air is thinner, and you can't feel the ends of your fingers, and your legs are rock heavy, and there's something hurting deep down in your guts. Probably your liver is about to explode, but that doesn't matter so much because your lungs are drying out, and that hurts so much that nothing else can get your attention. "It'll be 5 miles on Friday," said Coach Quattrini when we were finished. 5 miles on the Ides of March. On Wednesday afternoon, Mrs. Baker asked how my cross-country preparation was going. "Death, a necessary end," I said, "will come when it will come." Mrs. Baker smiled. "Do you think that death is coming for you on the cross-country course, Mr. Hoodhood?" You know what happened to Julius Caesar on the Ides of March," I said. "Cross-country tryouts will make that look like opening day at Yankee Stadium." "It's because you run so straight up," she said. "Because I run so straight up? And tight. You run so tight. I've watched you. It looks as if you're digging your fingernails into your palms." Which is exactly what I always did. "Are you saying I could run better?" She put down her copy of Julius Caesar. From her lower desk drawer, she took out a pair of bright white sneakers and put them on. "Caesar shall go forth," she said. "Where?" "Out to the track." "The 2 of us? Are you embarrassed that I might be faster than you?" she asked. "I'm not really worried about that, Mrs. Baker," I said. "Perhaps you should be," she said. "Look what happened to Julius Caesar when he underestimated those around him." So we went out to the track with Mrs. Baker wearing bright white sneakers. "Really?" "Let's start with your stance," she said. "Let's lean you forward a little bit so that you can always be moving into the next stride instead of holding yourself back on each stride. Lean this way." I did. "Run 50 paces and come back." I did. Again. I did. "At tempo," she said. I did. "That's fine. One could only wish you took so easily to diagramming sentences. Now your arm position, and then your head position, and then we'll get to breathing patterns." By the end of the afternoon, Mrs. Baker had remade the way that I ran. "I look like a jerk," I said. "If Romeo was a runner, he would run like this." "What you look like," she said, "is Jesse Owens, who won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Olympics running like that." So, figuring that you can't argue with 4 gold medals, that night I ran like Jesse Owens through the dark March streets, leaning forward, arms and legs like pistons, head straight and still, hands loose, breathing controlled. And then I ran like Jesse Owens in gym on Thursday and came in before Danny and in front of a whole lot of 8th graders. And I heard only one Faster, you wimp! Just one. Running like Jesse Owens really worked. So that afternoon, at the very end of the day, after everyone else had left, I went up to Mrs. Baker's desk. A big day for both of us tomorrow. A big day for us both tomorrow, said Mrs. Baker. The Ides of March, I said. Let's hope we both emerge unscathed, which, in case you missed it, was a teacher strategy again to make me look up the word unscathed. Mrs. Baker, I said, you helped a lot with my running. Thank you, Mr. Hoodhood. So I thought I would try to pay you back. Pay me back? Yes, to help you get ready for tomorrow when the school board comes. You want to coach me in teaching, Mr. Hoodhood? Yes. Have you ever been a 7th grade English teacher? No, but you've never been a track runner. Mrs. Baker raised a single eyebrow. So what do you suggest, Coach? No teacher jokes, I said. No one ever laughs at teacher jokes. All right, no teacher jokes. And no folding your arms like this. I folded my arms around my chest. It makes it look like you're about to shoot us if we don't do what you say. That is the point, said Mrs. Baker. And no rolling your eyes, even if someone says something really stupid. I never roll my eyes, said Mrs. Baker. I looked at her. All right, she said. No rolling my eyes. Anything else, Coach? When someone does something good, I think you should let them know with some sort of code. I think you mean that when someone does something well, as in obeying the rules of proper diction, we should use a code. What do you suggest? Well, maybe azalea for something good, and chrysanthemum for something really good. Thank you, Mr. Hoodhood. We'll dispense with the code, and I'll simply use the unvarnished English language to tell you when you've done something well. But as to teacher jokes, folding of arms and rolling of eyes, I'll consider your advice. I nodded. And Coach, one more thing before you leave, said Mrs. Baker. She reached into her lower desk drawer again and pulled out a wooden box. Open it, she said. I did. Inside was a round silver disc on a velvet dark red ribbon. The 16th Olympiad, Melbourne, 1956, it said. Mrs. Baker leaned back in her chair. It was for the women's 4x100 relay. Don't look so surprised. You didn't think I'd spent my whole life behind this desk, did you? And I suddenly realized that, well, I guess I had. Weren't all teachers born behind their desks, fully grown, with a red pen in their hand and ready to grade? Go home now, Mr. Hoodhood, said Mrs. Baker, and tomorrow run like Jesse Owens. The Ides of March dawned on Friday with a green and brown sky, the color of the water in a dying pond. All morning the sky hung low, and sometimes the green and brown clouds would roll up and rumble a bit, and then settle back down like a layer of unhappiness over everything. We all talked in whispers, and we waited for something to happen up in heaven, or maybe up in those asbestos ceiling tiles. And since waiting gets boring really quickly, I decided that in the pause between non-restrictive clauses and weak verb systems, I would tell Danny about the scene where Julius Caesar gets stabbed, which is a lot better than the scene where Juliet gets stabbed, and act it out with appropriate sound effects, which I do pretty well, since I have some experience acting out Shakespeare on stage, as you might remember. I don't know if it was because of the green and brown sky, or because of her cold, or because of something else, but Mrs. Baker came over like Brutus himself to do Julius Caesar in. Mr. Hoodhood, she said, I have not taught you the plays of William Shakespeare for the last 5